Welcome back. I'm Lynda Kinkade. More than 4,100 people have now been killed in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. And that is after the Hamas terror attacks in Israel that killed at least 1,400 people. Well, now a new warning from the United Nations, which says more than 500,000 people taking refuge in UN shelters in Gaza are under increasingly dire conditions. Well, for more on the humanitarian crisis people are facing, I want to welcome Sari Bashir, the Program Director at Human Rights Watch. Sari joins us from the West Bank. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
So you've taught international humanitarian law at Yale Law School. You've led an Israel human rights group promoting freedom of movement for the Palestinians in Gaza, and now you're leading research for Human Rights Watch. How would you describe what's happening in Gaza right now?
What's happening in Gaza right now is unprecedented. All of this is unprecedented. The Hamas-led attacks on Israeli civilians on October 7th were the worst civilian massacre in Israeli history. And the Israeli response in terms of airstrikes and deliberately depriving people in Gaza of vital supplies like food, water, fuel, and electricity are also unprecedented. For the last week and a half, no supplies have entered Gaza. The Israeli military turned off the water and electricity, which they ordinarily supply to Gaza. There are 1.4 million people who are displaced. People don't have enough water to drink. The sewage is running in the streets because there's no electricity or fuel to power the treatment, the pumping stations. And people are also running out of food. It's never been this bad.
So the US president has promised $100 million in humanitarian assistance to Gaza and the West Bank, but just a few days ago the US vetoed a United Nations Security Council resolution that would have called for a humanitarian pause in the conflict to let aid in. What do you make of that?
So first of all, the U.S. president came here and supposedly brokered a deal for humanitarian access that is painfully under-ambitious. President Biden's big accomplishment was getting the Israeli government, in theory, to allow 20 trucks of goods to enter via the Egyptian crossing. That hasn't happened yet. But the United States can ask of Israel three very simple things. Turn back the water, turn it on. Turn back the electricity, turn it on. There's no security risk to doing that. It can be done immediately. And allow access through the Israeli crossings with Gaza for the minimum of 100 trucks per day that humanitarian workers say are necessary. In every previous conflict, the Israeli government has found ways to open the crossings with Gaza and allow humanitarian supplies in. What's different about this particular escalation is that the Israeli government has openly said it is going to deprive civilians in Gaza of vital necessities like food and water in retaliation for the actions of fighters. Gaza is about the size of the city of Philadelphia. There's 2.2 million people, nearly half of whom are children. That's collective punishment. When the Israeli military denies vital supplies to children to punish them for the acts of adult fighters, it's collective punishment and it's a war crime.
And we are hearing that this hour, that border crossing from Gaza and Egypt, the Rafah crossing, will open to allow some of those aid trucks to go in. But you're saying we don't know how long that border crossing will be open, if indeed it does open. You're saying these aid trucks need to be coming in every single day.
They need to be coming every single day. They need to be coming in from the Israeli crossings. And before we even get to the logistical issues of getting aid trucks in, Israel supplies water to Gaza. It has turned off the taps. That's the clean water that people in Gaza need. The U.S. government needs to say very clearly to Israel, restore water supply, restore electricity supply, and also to allow fuel in, because the Israeli government has said it will not even allow fuel on the Egyptian border. And that's what the water system needs. That's what hospitals need. Hospitals are running out of fuel for their generators. They're struggling to treat more than 13,000 injured people in addition to regular medical needs. This doesn't have to be as horrible as it is. If the same principle that guided the United States in its rightful outrage of the Hamas targeting of Israeli civilians holds true, the U.S. needs to say that Israel cannot target civilians in Gaza by depriving them of vital supplies.
Israel has asked people in the Al Quds hospital in Gaza to evacuate because there could be an airstrike soon. I spoke to an Israeli Defense Force spokesperson earlier and asked about that. He said they're not specifically targeting the hospital, but that the hospital is likely to be impacted by a strike nearby. In the eyes of humanitarian law, is that allowed? Is that legally something that Israel could do without, how would you describe it?
Under international humanitarian law, hospitals have special protections, and warring parties have obligations to protect civilians, as does Israel in particular as the occupying power in Gaza. The problem with the evacuation orders that the Israeli government is issuing is that there's nowhere to go and there's no safe place to get there. So ordinarily, warring parties are encouraged to give warnings to civilians where those warnings allow civilians to keep themselves safe. But if you tell people to evacuate and there's nowhere to go and no way to evacuate the 400 plus critically ill patients who don't have a safe place to go to, that's not an effective warning. And the people who remain in the hospital retain their protections under international law. And the Israeli government needs to ensure that it does not strip civilians of the protections they have because they cannot or will not obey an impossible evacuation order.
Sari Bashir from Human Rights Watch, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, as we just mentioned, we are getting word that trucks are now crossing from the Egyptian side of the Rafah border into Gaza. Now, this border has been closed for days with neither people nor goods passing through. The trucks carrying humanitarian aid supplies have been lining up on the Egyptian side, ready to drive into Gaza, where the needs are, of course, immense. As we've been discussing, people there without clean drinking water, food, electricity, fuel, medical supplies. Visitors and foreigners, of course, have also been waiting to get out of Gaza into Egypt and back to their home nations. US President Joe Biden announced earlier this week that Egypt's president said he would allow some aid to get through. The U.S. Embassy in Israel is warning the situation could become chaotic if too many people try to cross the border all at once. We will